Chad Part 2. Welcome. This is Part 2 of the lore of Chad. To get the full experience, please watch Part 1. As they descended the spiral stairs into the darkness, the air grew thick and heavy, laced with the smell of decay. They reached the landing, their footsteps echoing along the carefully carved stone walls. As they walked deeper into the labyrinth, Jasper grabbed Chad's shoulder. He leaned in and whispered, "Listen, lad. Don't turn your back on Rabbit. I don't trust him." Chad nodded, but before he could ask why, they came to a stop in front of a massive black hole in the pristinely carved wall of the tunnel. "That's not made by dwarves," Jasper muttered, eyes narrowing. Lamel raised her torch, the flame casting dancing shadows across the jagged tear in the wall. As the light spilled in, something scuttled away from the edge of the hole. Rabbit stepped up behind them, eyes fixed on the black gouge in the stone. "Looks fresh," he muttered. "Edges are splintered, not worn. Something tore its way out." "No," Lamel said, peering into the darkness. "In." It forced its way in. "See how the stone curves inward? This was a sealed wall once. Whatever was in there wasn't supposed to get in." Chad swallowed hard. His torch flickered violently, as if the air itself shivered in dread. A low scraping sound echoed from within the darkness, not loud, but unmistakable, like claws against stone. "We should keep moving," Chad said, his voice thin. "We should seal it," Jasper growled, gripping his axe tighter. Lamel ignored them both. "We came for treasure," she said. "Whatever's down here probably guards something worth finding." Rabbit grinned. "Now that's the spirit." The four of them stood at the threshold of the broken wall, shadows yawning before them like the open jaws of some great buried beast. Then, deeper in the tunnel, something hissed. Suddenly snakes lashed out from the darkness, long, scaled things with milky eyes and fangs jutting out. Lamel reacted first, swinging her torch in a wide arc. One serpent hissed as the flame caught it, thrashing backward and sending a spray of embers across the floor. Chad yelped and jumped back, narrowly avoiding a strike. His sword trembled in his grip as he fumbled to unsheath it. Jasper barked a warning and brought his axe down in a brutal chop. One snake's head flew through the air. Another coiled toward him, and he met it with another savage blow, splattering the walls with dark blood. Behind them, Rabbit remained calm and deadly. He loosed arrows into the dark with practiced precision. Shrill screeches and wet thuds confirmed his aim. "Behind you!" Lamel shouted. Chad turned just in time to see a serpent lunging from a crack in the ceiling. He ducked, heart hammering, and drove his sword upward with both hands. The rusted blade punched into soft flesh. The snake gave a final twitch and fell limp. Lamel was already moving. She stepped into the shadowed breach, torch held high. "Move!" she barked. Without hesitation, the others followed. They emerged into a new chamber, a low vaulted space littered with broken statues and scattered bones. Strange markings were carved and painted into the walls. Chad looked around, the flickering torchlight making everything seem unreal. "That wasn't natural," he muttered. "Snakes don't act like that." Jasper wiped his axe clean on the stone floor. "Nothing down here is natural." Rabbit nudged a skull with his boot. "Looks like someone else had the same idea we did. Poor bastards." Lamel stepped forward, raising her torch toward the far side of the room. A massive stone door stood half open, just enough to let a whisper of cold, damp air curl through the space. "I think the treasure's deeper in," she said. "Wait!" cried Jasper. "This is what I've been looking for." His hand brushed over the cryptic engravings on the wall. In the flickering torchlight, Chad caught movement, a figure approaching silently behind Jasper. Chad cried out a warning, but it was too late. The skeleton's broken sword slammed into Jasper's arm, and the dwarf crumpled with a grunt. Lamel and Chad rushed in. Lamel shoved the skeletal assailant back with jabs from her spear, torch held high in her other hand. Her strikes were fast, but clumsy, the awkward one-handed thrusts barely keeping the thing at bay. Chad closed in, sword drawn, shield raised. He went toe-to-toe with the living skeleton, blocking savage blows with his shield and searching for an opening. Twack! Rabbit's bowstring snapped through the air. An arrow sank deep into the skeleton's ribcage, but it didn't even flinch. Chad caught another strike on his shield, the impact sending a shudder up his arm. Out of nowhere, Lamel lunged forward, her spear punching through the skeleton's chest and pinning it to the wall. The torch lay on the ground behind them, casting long shadows. The skeleton still lashed out with a sword, but Chad was able to block the blow in a swift swipe of his sword, cleave through the neck bones, the skull dropping to the ground with a satisfying crunch. They entered the next corridor. A long hallway, large rats scuttled from the torchlight, the red eyes piercing from the darkness. "Ready!" commanded Lamel. Chad prepared himself. He was standing nearly shoulder to shoulder with Lamel in the narrow passageway. Jasper and Rabbit in the rear. The rats charged out of the darkness, half-starved and looking for their next meal, rabid foam spewing from their mouths, driven by hunger and madness. Lamel impaled the closest one. Chad hesitated, but only for a moment. He did not want to kill living things, but he did not want himself or his friends to get bit by them more. He swung his sword in a wide, low slash. The rat was fast, easily evading the attack, scampering up the wall. Chad felt the wind in his hair as Jasper's axe flew inches from his head. Cleaning the rat in half against the wall, the bottom half slid down the wall, leaving a red smear of entrails. The next few hours were a blur to Chad as they went room by room, slaying any twisted creatures that lurked there, and looking for anything of value. Along the way, the party collected several minor injuries, cuts and scrapes, bruises, and a smashed finger. Chad now found himself in a large chamber with the others. They had decided to stop here after finding something troubling further along. They barricaded the only entrance to the room with a table that they had found. It wouldn't stop anything, but it would make enough noise to alert them. Lamel suggested that they should get some sleep, and Jasper offered to take the first watch, while he transcribed some marking on a wall onto a folded piece of paper that he had brought along, and a charcoal stick. The fire had burned low, little more than glowing embers nestled in ash. The room was quiet, save for Jasper's soft snoring. Chad stirred awake, a weight on his cloak tugging. Something felt off. His hand instinctively reached for the sword at his side. Nothing. His eyes snapped open. He sat up, patting the floor around him. The sword was gone. He turned to the others. Jasper's axe was missing from beside him. Lamel's pack had been unbuckled, its contents scattered. Rations, rope, flintstones. Gone. Rabbit's bow was still there, but the quiver had been neatly emptied. "What the?" Chad began. A sharp clink echoed in the darkness, like a coin dropping onto stone. Then another, then the faintest sound of giggling. Not human giggling. High-pitched, raspy, guttural. "Hey!" Lamel was already on her feet, torch in hand. "Get up!" she barked. Jasper grunted, rolling over and squinting. "What now?" "We've been robbed," said Chad, "while we were asleep." Chad stood there, stunned. "They took my sword, and my rations," grumbled Lamel. "They emptied my entire coin purse," said Rabbit. Purr's expression darkened. "That's impossible. No one got past me." More giggles. This time, closer. Chad caught movement out of the corner of his eye. A shimmer, like heat rising from stone, scurried across the far wall. Then another. Tiny footprints appeared in the dust near the fire pit, forming and fading as if made by ghosts. "Invisible," Rabbit whispered. "Gremlins. Has to be." "I hate gremlins," Lamel muttered. A pebble bounced across the floor. Rabbit lunged, swinging wildly at empty air. "Give me back my arrows, you freaks!" There was a snap, as something tugged hard on the strap of Chad's pack and sent it flying across the room. He dove after it, but the bag slid away from him, dragged by unseen claws. We can't fight what we can't see, shouted Chad, backing toward the wall. I have an idea, said Lamel. She grabbed the bag of flour from the supplies they'd salvaged earlier. With a quick twist of the cloth, she burst it open into the air. A fine white cloud spread through the chamber. There, they were everywhere. Little imps, barely knee-high, twisted and hunched, with ears like bat wings and grins full of needle teeth. The flour clung to their shapes as they scurried for cover, hissing and chittering in alarm. "Get them!" shouted Jasper. One gremlin cackled and leapt through the barricade table like a shadow, vanishing into the corridor with Chad's sword in hand, if it could be called a hand. Another dashed past Rabbit, throwing a mushroom at his face before disappearing through a crack in the wall. Chad shoved the table aside and took off down the corridor, chasing the gremlins. Rabbit followed close on his heels. Lamel shouted for them to stop, but they didn't. They tore around one corner, then another, the firelight from the camp fading behind them. Somewhere back in the dark, they could hear Jasper running to catch up, the faint glow of his torch barely reaching them. Chad kept his eyes on the gremlin just yards ahead, doing his best not to lose it. Then it darted between a pair of legs. Legs! Chad skidded to a halt. In front of him loomed two towering creatures, their eyes glowing red. Trolls. The trolls loomed like statues of living stone, their skin mottled gray-green and thick. Moss clung to their limbs like a second coat. One held a broken pillar as a club. The other cracked its knuckles, each pop echoing down the corridor like bones snapping. Chad backpedaled instinctively, raising his shield. Rabbit cursed under his breath and knocked an arrow and cursed. The gremlins vanished behind the troll's legs with a gleeful cackle, its thieving hands still clutching Chad's sword. One of the trolls stepped forward, dragging its club along the ground. Rock chips flew where it scraped the stone. "Rabbit," Chad said, not taking his eyes off the monsters. "How many arrows do you have?" "Not enough." Behind them, Jasper's torchlight flickered around the corner as he caught up, panting. Lamel arrived moments later, face taut with frustration. "You idiots," she spat. "You led us into a trap." The corridor narrowed behind the trolls, blocked with rubble, an opening just big enough for the gremlins. No retreat, no cover, just a flickering torch, 3 allies at Chad's side, and 2 trolls moving in like executioners. Chad's heart pounded. He didn't have his sword, just his shield, a borrowed dagger, and the shaky determination of someone too stubborn to run. Jasper lit a second torch and tossed it on the ground behind them. "We kill them," he said grimly, "or we die here. If we try to run, they will chase us down." Chad glanced at his companions, and for the first time he felt like they were a real party, fractured, scared, ill-equipped, but standing together. He raised his shield and stepped forward. "Then we kill them." The trolls let out a guttural roar and charged. Diving to his knees, Jasper barely dodged the pillar club. Rabbit jumped back and began shooting arrows. Lamel faced off with one on her own. Chad rushed in to help. "They regenerate, so if one goes down, make sure it can't get up," ordered Lamel. Chad ducked as the troll's massive club whooshed overhead, the impact shattering stone behind him. Rabbit shot arrows in rapid succession, but the wounds sealed almost as fast as they opened. Jasper, unarmed except for a torch, swung it wildly, driving the troll back with fire. "They don't like the heat," he shouted. Lamel slashed low at the second troll's legs, forcing it to stumble as. Chad moved in with his shield, attempting to bash the troll with it, but the troll caught it and ripped it away, throwing it behind him. Chad lost his balance. Then he felt a large hand grab him, and his feet dangled off of the floor. Lamel plunged her spear into the beast's stomach, and he roared in pain. It threw Chad. He momentarily flew through the air before crashing hard against the stone floor, the impact knocking the wind from his lungs. He gasped, ears ringing, as Lamel yanked her spear free and danced back just in time to avoid a sweeping blow. The troll clutched its gut, thick black blood oozing between its fingers, but it was already beginning to heal. "On your feet, farm boy!" Jasper barked, skidding beside him with a half-burned torch in hand. Chad rolled over coughing, eyes wide as the second troll lunged through the smoke toward Rabbit. The beast pounced on Rabbit, pinning him to the ground. It roared in his face, spewing thick saliva all over Rabbit's face. Chad fought through the pain. Something was broken in his side. He grabbed a torch from Jasper and changed the beast, hitting it in the face with the torch. The troll howled and reeled back, smoke curling from its scorched face. Rabbit scrambled free, coughing and wiping spit from his eyes. Jasper moved in from the side, pulling a knife from his belt and stabbing it into the creature's knee. "Fireworks!" Chad shouted, gripping the torch tighter as he circled the troll. Across the space, LML was wearing the other troll down his body, had a dozen cuts and punctures, and was growing weaker. But so was Lamel. The beast lunged at Jasper, but Chad waved the torch in its face, and it backed off. Out of nowhere, Rabbit jumped on the beast's back, stabbing it repeatedly with an arrow. The troll thrashed violently, slamming its back against the stone wall in an attempt to dislodge Rabbit. The hunter held on, teeth gritted, driving the arrow down again and again, until the troll let out a final, choking groan and collapsed. Chad turned just in time to see Lamel fall to one knee, blood dripping from a gash on her thigh. With a roar, Jasper hurled the extra torch from the ground into the face of her opponent, giving her the opening she needed to drive her spear through its chest. The second troll crashed to the ground, twitching, then lay still. Lamel slumped to the ground exhausted. Chad tried and Jasper tried to catch their breath. Rabbit let out a laugh and Chad couldn't help but smile. The moment was short-lived. The troll with the arrow in its neck began to stir. Jasper walked over to it and slammed his boot down on his neck. The cracking noise made Chad feel sick to his stomach, but the beast did not stir again. After catching their breath, Chad took inventory of their condition. He was sore all over and there was an awful pain on the side of his chest, especially when he inhaled. He looked at the others. Jasper's beard was singed and his knuckles were bloody, but he stood tall, retrieving his torch with a grunt. Lamel sat hunched, her spear planted in the ground to keep her steady, her leg wound hastily bandaged with cloth ripped from her pants. Rabbit was already checking the fallen trolls for anything useful, humming a tune under his breath like it had all been a game. His bow lay discarded on the ground, snapped in half. Chad winced as he turned. "Everyone's still breathing?" "Barely," muttered Lamel through a busted lip. "But breathing, yeah." "We can't stay here," Jasper said, his voice grim. "If there are trolls, there's worse. And we running low on gear? Soon, we'll be down to our last torch." "Just hang on a sec," called Rabbit from the back of the corridor where it as caved in. He was shoving something into his pockets. "What have you found?" asked Jasper. "A stash of gems, more than enough to make this trip profitable." "It's decided then," groaned Lamel. "Let's get out of here while we still can." Chad did not want to leave without his grandfather's sword. Jasper looked at Chad, seeing the hesitation in his eyes. "We'll come back for it," he said gently, though his tone lacked conviction. "But we leave now, or we don't leave at all." Chad clenched his fists. Every step away from the stolen sword felt like a betrayal, but he nodded. Rabbit was already moving, the torch held high. "Back the way we came." They limped through the dark corridors, shadows clawing at the edges of their torchlight. Every creak of stone, every distant drip made Chad's heart race. But the trolls didn't follow and the gremlins were nowhere in sight. For now, they made their way out of the dungeon without further incident. It was slow going. Lamel limped heavily, leaning on her spear. Chad winced with every hard step. Pain flared in his chest. Lamel said he likely had broken ribs. They were lucky to make it out at all. With nearly all their weapons gone, except for Lamel's, they wouldn't have stood a chance in another fight. As they emerged from the cave, the daylight stung Chad's eyes. The air felt strange, fresh, and cool, like breathing for the first time. Wordlessly, they made their way down the mountain trail, heading back toward Gale. "What'll happen to the dungeon?" Chad asked quietly. "Won't it cause problems, having a place like that just—" there. Either word will spread, and stronger adventurers will clear it out, Lamel said, her voice dry. Or the beasts inside will start crawling out. If that happens, the military will seal it off. Can we make camp soon? I'm exhausted, Rabbit asked, dragging his feet, arced the turns. Aye, as soon as I'm out of the mountains, I'd like to put some distance between us and that place, replied Jasper,